What is up? This is the Nook podcast. My name is Steven, and it's so good to have you here with me today. While I may touch on a myriad of topics within this show, the primary goal will always be to magnify Jesus. John 3:30 says that he must become greater and greater, and I must become less and less. If you ever get the crazy idea of emailing me, I would love to hear from you. My email address is in the show notes, along with links to the Nook Facebook page and my social media feeds. I mentioned last week that I recently returned from a 2-week work trip in Europe. I was documenting a few different things on video, and it gave me some unique perspectives, and I wanted to share them here and talk about what it meant for me. Let's call this a story time episode. This will break out as 3 chapters based on the 3 countries I visited. My journey began in Thessaloniki, Greece. This beautiful metropolis in the northeast corner of the country has all the look and feel of a very modern city. There is a pulse and a tempo to this place. Street after street of very historic-looking buildings, but most of them have been renovated to be very modern on the inside. Business, commerce, and some of the most amazing mom-and-pop restaurants you have ever experienced. No matter where you are, you're never far from the waterfront along the edge of the Aegean Sea. With all its history, beauty, and charm, it's no surprise that tourism is the primary source of income here. But that's also where things take a dark turn. This area is a prime channel for human trafficking, specifically forced prostitution and forced labor. This is compounded by prostitution being completely legal in the country of Greece. Human traffickers prey on the most vulnerable, young women who are often promised better jobs and living conditions, only to find that they have been trapped, forced into life as a sex worker. I feel the need to paint this rather bleak picture to shed some light on something that may get a short mention in the news occasionally, but then it's buried again, as if everything is fixed. This isn't just an attempt at journalism on my part. I have seen this stuff with my own eyes, and to call it disgusting would be a gross understatement. Proverbs 31:8-9 says to speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, ensure justice for those being crushed. Yes, speak up for the poor and helpless, and see that they get justice. This is why I am incredibly proud to see organizations like A21 that have not just talked about doing something. This entity has set up offices in 15 countries to stop this unthinkable activity. Christine Kane has been given an incredible vision to fight the darkness as God would have us do.
A21 officially started about 15 years ago, but unofficially it truly started about 17 years ago. Some of you are going, Christine, you're jumping into A21. What's A21? A21 is a global anti-trafficking organization that I run together with my husband, Nick, and a whole team. We have 19 offices in 15 countries around the world, and our whole goal is to abolish slavery everywhere together. Everything that we are doing, we want to abolish slavery everywhere forever. Everything is geared to that one central aim.
Here, we were able to record the testimony of a young woman who had been trafficked as a prostitute in an expensive local hotel. As she shared parts of her unthinkable life as a slave, there were moments when our entire crew was wiping away tears. She is now called a survivor. And not only has she found freedom, but she has also become a mentor to other women who are being rescued. While in the middle of hearing about such incomprehensible mistreatment of people, it is pure bliss to have a hand in curating a success story. Seeing hope in a young woman's eyes who previously thought she might never see it again leaves me at a loss for words. The second stop of the trip was Bulgaria, where our mission was twofold. More stories of the fight against human trafficking, as well as seeing the plight of so many refugees who have fled from war-torn Ukraine. A21 is also very active in this Eastern European city that has a recorded history going back nearly 7,000 years. The capital city of Sofia is a known destination for women and children who have been tricked or kidnapped. It is such a harsh wake-up call to find out that so much depravity is basically happening in plain sight. Such awareness is a gut punch, but again, seeing the efforts to rescue women out of that world helps lessen the blow. We were then able to change gears. Our next assignment in Bulgaria was to look into the predicament of countless Ukrainian refugees who have fled their country looking for safety and stability. Many refugees made their way south to the Bulgarian capital city of Sofia. I truly hate how politicized these things have become. I know that there is no easy answer. But while the politicians argue and the news outlets spin the narrative, there are so many people, humans, image bearers who have nearly nothing and no one to turn to. There is nothing that you might have ever seen on the news that will compare to looking into the eyes of someone who has seen their home destroyed and their lives threatened. Bystanders in the middle of wars and conflicts. Throw away all of your opinions, political or otherwise, and realize that these are just hurting people. The highlight here was that we visited a very small church whose pastor has decided to do something. That Sunday began with watching nearly 80 people cram into a small, nondescript, and somewhat renovated office space to hold a church service. While we didn't understand a word spoken, we felt so welcome. It didn't take long to recognize the melodies from songs we sing in our American churches. It didn't look much like any church service I had ever been to, but these were my brothers and sisters in Christ. Their pastor prayed with such conviction, and it was easy to see in the faces of the congregation that they were there to encounter Jesus. It was a beautiful reminder that God's church is alive all over the world. A 2-hour church service went by so fast. But that didn't mean that everyone exited the building. No sooner were things over when so many of them went to work piling up food, water, and baby supplies that were then separated into individual bags. All the while, refugees began to file in and wait. The surrounding area has become a haven for hundreds who fled their home country. Some have been there for a couple of years now, while others only a few months. We spoke to one couple whose home had been bombed 3 times in 2 different conflicts. Neither of them could hold back the tears while talking about so much destruction and fear. They spoke about the contrast of the fear of being in the middle of a war zone and the gratefulness of now being in an unfamiliar but safe place. A place they and their 6-year-old son could begin to rebuild their lives. And they are doing so with the assistance of a group of God's people who refuse to see themselves as too few in number to make an impact. Sunday after Sunday, Pastor Philip and his church prepare what they have to be given away, sharing Jesus in tangible ways, never expecting anything in return. My final stop of the trip was in Hamburg, Germany. First of all, what a beautiful country. I hope I can return there to see more of it at some point. While looking at the skyline, it's impossible to miss the towering steeples of beautiful old churches. Sadly, so many of these buildings have been reduced to being museums and tourist attractions. Relics of a faith that has been mostly forgotten. We walked inside a couple of them, and while I felt the need to be respectful, taking off my hat and remaining silent, I could still sense the great disconnection being in such a masterpiece of a building designed as a place where people could come and worship, and now it has an admission price and a gift shop. While looking at the intricate stonework, I recalled a work trip to the Czech Republic many years ago. My hosts took me to the National Cathedral in Prague. I was blown away by its scale and beauty. I asked if it was ever used for anything church-like. They told me it was not. I couldn't help but wonder how much preparation went into planning that place. How long did it take to build? And did the people of the 13th century who worshipped there ever imagine that it would become a place where God had been mostly forgotten? The German churches were much the same. Outside of these monuments, any evidence of religion was hard to find. As in the previous 2 countries, these disappointing realizations were met with stories of the gospel being spread all over Germany and France in much more modern ways. And our final day was spent with a small group of locals who routinely go into impoverished areas of the city and do outreaches for children. We watched as a couple of dozen kids from different ethnic and national backgrounds gathered in a park to laugh, play games, and hear about the God who loves them so much. There is something so incredible about the opportunities I have to be involved in capturing these stories in such amazing places. Inevitably, people will ask me if I got to do anything that might be considered more of a tourist nature, and my answer is always the same: not really. Our team always has a very strict schedule to adhere to. The days are long. There is always a challenge getting all of our video gear on and off airplanes and airports that are not always the easiest to navigate. And even the best made plans can change unexpectedly, and we are forced to pivot. but the rewards are indescribable. I have now been to 16 countries, and some of what I've seen is unthinkable, unimaginable. And yet, in each of these places, I meet some of the most incredible people. They love Jesus and are sold out to the cause of doing whatever little part they can play in a much bigger story. Eternity has been marked because of the work these people are doing. I have the unique honor of capturing the stories of so many lives that have been touched by the love of God and the kindness of His followers. I have had countless times when I have been able to look into the eyes of someone who has been changed forever. Even if they don't yet understand why people have been motivated to do so much for them, I believe one day they will. In Romans chapter 10, verses 14 and 15, it says, "But how can they call on Him to save them unless they believe in Him? And how can they believe in Him if they have never heard about Him? And how can they hear about Him unless someone tells them? And how can anyone go to tell them without being sent?" I pray that God continues to bless the efforts of the people I met, and that He continues to reveal who He is to those who are in such desperate situations. My challenge to you, dear listeners, is to pray for efforts like this. God is doing amazing things all over the world, and the least we can do is to pray for the people involved. Do some research, find an organization you trust, and start sending money towards the effort, and do it monthly. Get some skin in the game. In Matthew 9:33, Jesus said to the disciples, "The harvest is great, but the workers are few. So pray to the Lord who is in charge of the harvest. Ask Him to send more workers into the field." Allow me to give you some suggestions. If you check the show notes, I've listed some links to organizations I can wholeheartedly recommend. I've met their leaders, I have documented their work, and can endorse them without hesitation. What I love most about these organizations is that not only are they helping with so many different needs, they always include sharing the gospel. This is one aspect of how the body of Christ is supposed to work. If you can't physically go to where there are great needs, then support those who can, prayerfully and financially. Ask God who He would have you get involved with, and then go all in. Galatians 6:9 says, "Let's not get tired of doing what is good." How cool would it be if the Nook community would start helping people together? I will post the links to the organizations I know of on the Nook Facebook page. If you have any more suggestions, leave a comment with the information for your favorite charities, and let's start doing something good. Thank you so much for going on a bit of a field trip with me today. I hope it sparks something amazing in you. And I will catch you here next time in the Nook.
The Nook Podcast is a production of Sozo Digital Media.